some of y'all about to be mad at me with this one. Shit. But oh well. What's up guys, it's Sophie. Today I'm going to be talking about probably one of the most controversial topics in the Black community because so many of you think that all Black people are treated the same. Colorism. I've made a video on colorism before and I wanted to make one again for Black History Month. Well, my first video on Black History Month. Black History Month has been going on for like a week now, but I've just been inconsistent. So I decided to do my first video on colorism because I go through my analytics, I read all of my comments, I look at all of my engagement. I've noticed, as crazy as this sounds, some of the same light-skinned viewers that I see commending my videos on white privilege and white racism and like supporting those videos and loving those videos are also the same people that give me so much shit when I talk about colorism. Why is that? So today's video is going to be debunking myths that people have about colorism. I'm gonna get straight into this video, but a few things that I just want to mention before I start. Number one, I'm so sorry that I've been inconsistent recently. I know that I always say that I'm busy, but yes, school is a priority and it will always be like a little bit higher than YouTube, but this is a priority too, and I want to honor that. So I've challenged myself to go an entire month without missing an upload. I upload every Sundays and this is the first Sunday, so for the next month I'm not gonna miss another Sunday, and if I do, I literally give you permission to go onto my social media and cyberbully me. Like, I give you permission to do that. Number two, the light is going to be acting crazy throughout this video. I don't have my studio lights in Philly with me yet, but right now the lighting's looking pretty cute, but it's probably gonna get darker later on. And then lastly, number three, if you're coming onto this video just to be mad, honestly suit yourself, because you already clicked on this video and your view is gonna contribute to the check that I'm gonna get at the end of this month from YouTube. And if you do end up like commenting, trying to like debate with me or like just argue with me, just make sure that you're well versed and educated in this topic, because bitch, I am, at least in this topic. I don't know a lot about a lot of things, but I know a lot about this, and I have the time this February, so we can hash it out. That's it for this intro. Let's get into talking about colorism. Number one, this is probably the most important thing. If you could take anything away from this video, I would like it to be this. There is no such thing as reverse colorism. That is not a thing. It's never been a thing. In the same way that there is no such thing as reverse racism, I guess the reverse of homophobia would be heterophobia, that's not a thing. I'm gonna be making parallels throughout this video to other forms of privilege, like white privilege and straight privilege. And the reason why I'm able to make those parallels is because there are different intersections of privilege and not all of them are racial. So like, I'm privileged. Like, even though I'm a dark-skinned woman, I'm also cisgendered, I'm straight, I'm able-bodied, I'm getting a college education. Like, those are all forms of privilege that have nothing to do with race. The form of privilege that I'm talking about here, which is light skin privilege, that is something that is physical, that you can obviously see. And you can see that I'm dark skinned and you can treat me differently or make comments about me because of it, and trust me, people have. The main idea of point number one is that the same way that reverse racism isn't a thing, you know, people of color cannot discriminate against the systemic power and control that white people have had for centuries, is the same way that within the Black community there is a systemic form of privilege, meaning that the closest that you look to being white, the more worthy your life must be, which is what Black people have been taught for centuries. Now wait a minute, after this point I can just see some of you guys typing this comment right now. I see it because I've gotten it before. What you're doing is dividing us further. We're all Black. All of us are Black. No matter what shade of Black you are, we are all Black. But when slave masters began raping dark-skinned slaves and creating what they called mulatto slaves, which was the closest thing to being white, and deemed their life as a light-skinned Black person weighted more than that of a dark-skinned's life, that's when we became divided. So if you're really saying that an 18-year-old is dividing light-skinned Black people and dark-skinned Black people, baby, you're 400 years late. That slave ship been sailed away and your intellect was on it. The same way that white people and Black people have been divided for centuries with the institution of American slavery doesn't just go away by not talking about it. And that's what always gets people when I start talking about colorism, because the fact of the matter is more people talk about white racism than they do about light skin privilege and issues within the Black community, which is probably the same reason why the same light skin viewers that commend my videos on white racism are also the ones that lose their shit when I say things like this. Mainly like girls who have like 3A, B, and C type hair are the ones to be like, why are we talking about hair in like a division? Why are we dividing people based on hair? We've been divided based on hair for centuries now. Like I mean, the entire idea of good hair and bad hair derives from colorism within the Black community. The fact that light-skinned girls are prioritized or celebrated way more than dark-skinned girls, and that's just a fact. Like there's really no secret about that. Light skin and curly hair being the most preferred or desired in mass media, social media, mainstream media is not a coincidence. But surprisingly, a lot of people think it is a coincidence. Light skin being the standard of Black beauty is not a coincidence. It all dates back to colorism, or the origin of colorism. This is not new news, which is probably why a lot of dark-skinned people want to talk about it. Pretending that it is a coincidence or being like, well, that's just the way things are, is a very ignorant and uneducated thing to say. And if you genuinely do believe that, I would encourage you to do research on colorism and where it began and where it started, to understand why things are the way that they are. 60, 70 years ago, if you passed the paper brown bag test and you were either the same shade or lighter than the shade of a brown paper bag, you had more privileges than anybody who was below that color. Some people who were exceptionally lighter were able to, you know, drink out of the same water fountains as white people, run in the same circles as white people, because they were the closest Black to being white, if that makes sense. They weren't white at all, they were Black people, but they just didn't look it. They didn't look as dark as they needed to be treated like the bottom of the barrel. That same conditioning in every single Black person's head, whether you're light or you're dark, that's the way that things are, and the lighter you are, the better, the darker you are, the worse. That trickles into where we are right now, especially if not many people want to address it. So colorism does still exist today, but it just obviously exists in different forms. If you were to ask me, I would definitely still say that light skin is the standard of Black beauty, unfortunately, but it's definitely not a coincidence. There's historical context to all different types of race relations. Also, for every single point that I make in this video, I think there are about 4 in my notes, I'm going to link an article in the description box that you can read that delves further into the point that I am saying in this video, so you can educate yourself even further, which is always good. Point number 3. Well, what I was just talking about kind of leads me into my point number 3. Dark-skinned Black women being jealous of you isn't colorism. It's not. The fact that I even have to say that is like really fucking upsetting. You are not experiencing a form of discrimination because a dark-skinned Black woman is jealous of you. They're probably coming from a place of insecurity and uncertainty within the color of their own skin, especially if they were conditioned to believe that light skin was the standard of Black beauty. Bitch, when I was in middle school, I wanted to be fucking light skin. Are you kidding me? That was before I understood the worth of the color of my skin and the kinkiness of my hair, and I didn't understand what colorism was. I just was aware, and I knew that, you know, everybody around me kind of deemed light skin as just better. I didn't know why. I didn't know what the reason was. I didn't really know much about race relations at all, but that's all I knew. So in my mind, I was like, there's something wrong with my skin, and the lighter I am, the better. That's not discrimination. That's just mental conditioning of colorism. Like, imagine if I sat up here and I really turned on my camera and I said, trans women are just jealous of me because I was born with a vagina. So that's discrimination. Like, imagine the bullshit that just came out of my mouth just then. Just play that back in your head really quickly. That's kind of what it sounds like when light-skinned Black people are upset about the conditions of colorism, essentially, and if somebody's jealous of them or somebody calls out the fact that light skin is the standard of Black beauty, unfortunately. Because let me tell you something, jealousy won't undo the centuries of America sympathizing and prioritizing light skin. So real quick, I just wanted to clear up, I said sympathizing and prioritizing light skin within the Black community. I meant to add that at the end, excluding white people from that sentiment. So just a takeaway, light skin jealousy is literally rooted in the idea that light skin is just worth more. So before getting upset about it, ask yourself, well, why? Why is this the way that it is? And instead of just believing that it's a coincidence, educate yourself. Do some research. Google it.
Get some help.
And better yet, talk about it. talk about it. And then I know what else you're about to say. I know, point 3, I know what you're about to say. Dark-skinned girls being jealous of me isn't my fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Of course it's not your fault. Instead of perpetuating the idea that light skin is the standard of black beauty, debunk that idea and talk about colorism and what it does to the black community. That's a form of education and awareness. Sulking in your own oblivion and ignorance does nothing for anybody, especially yourself. So number 4, I'm not gonna talk too much on it at all. I actually had an entire paragraph, but I think I'm gonna make a separate video on that. It's about preference within the black community. The only point that I'm gonna say, because of the rampant colorism that exists within the black community, especially amongst black men and light-skinned women, but black men, the term "that's just my preference" is bullshit. It's bullshit. I have preference, and I will never say that's just my preference, and if I ever have, that was coming from a place of ignorance, because there's always context to preference. You literally cannot have preference without bias. So yeah, that's bullshit, but I will make a video on preference. Number 5 is the last one that I have here. Some of y'all about to be mad at me with this one. Shit, but oh well. It is hypocritical if you call out white privilege, but you don't acknowledge light skin privilege. That's it. That's the video. I'll see you guys next week. At best, just at best, it's ignorance. It's complete and utter ignorance or oblivion or whatever you want to call it. We as human beings, no matter what forms of privilege that we have or what forms of discriminations that we face, we don't want to be the oppressors, we want to be the oppressed. It's human nature. Like, nobody wants to feel like they're doing anything wrong. Nobody wants to feel like they're discriminating against somebody else. That's why white people get so scared when you call them a racist, because like nobody wants to be a racist, or most people don't want to be racist. Most people, they don't want to be the oppressors, they want to be the oppressed, which is why Trump supporters say that they're oppressed when they get bullied for being Trump supporters. Even like when I first started talking about race, when I was like a freshman in high school, when I really got interested in it, I didn't even really call out the privileges that I had, because it's kind of human nature to not want to admit to the privileges that you have and to instead want to sulk in the discrimination that you face. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance on most levels makes you look uneducated, and there's nothing wrong with having privilege, but it's what you do with that privilege. There's nothing wrong with having light skin privilege, but if you don't acknowledge it, it's like you are here and the rest of the world is here and you're just like living in your own little ignorance bubble, not doing anything. It's like if I were to talk about white privilege and call out their privilege, but then when the LGBTQ plus community calls out straight people and like check straight people on certain things, I'm like, well, don't check me because I didn't do anything wrong. There are different intersections of privilege, and if you have a form of privilege, you will benefit from it, but if you don't acknowledge it, you kind of just look like you're uneducated on that topic, at least. So that's all I'm gonna say. If I taught you something new, great. If you still don't believe anything that I said and you kind of just like came to this video to get upset, I encourage you to like read the articles in the description down below so that you know that I'm not pulling all of this out of my asshole. Like, I didn't just take a shit and then this information came out, but that there are other people talking about this too. Like, I'm not the only one that's like, I didn't make up the term colorism. Like, that's been a thing, but more people talk about white racism than they do about colorism, because when you have white racism, you have the entire black community and all people of color calling out white racism because they all experience it. When you have colorism, you only have a section of these communities calling it out, the people that are actually experiencing the oppression. In that case, and when it comes to colorism, the people that actually have privilege, a lot of them, not all of them, a lot of them don't want to believe that it exists, or just pretends that it doesn't, or doesn't understand it, or thinks that they're not the problem. But the fact of the matter is, if you're not acknowledging it, you are part of the problem. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say. Let me end this video because it's getting too long. That was it. That was my video. That was my first video for this Black History Month. I want to make many, many more. I'm literally gonna film another one like today. And then I also have one for Valentine's Day that has nothing to do with race. The Valentine's Day video is gonna be really, really fun. It has to do with sugar daddies, and because I'm 18, it's legal now. Again, the comments are for discussing what I talked about or this topic in general. Please state your opinions, questions, or concerns. But if you are gonna come to hate, I'm gonna make you look very uneducated. So like, just before you comment something, make sure you know what you're talking about, because I have the time. I'm not even gonna delete the comment. Like, I have the time this History Month to debate. So yeah, that is it for this video. I love you all so, so much, and I will see you this Valentine's Day with another new video. Bye.